The fateful discovery. Captain Luka Ivanov sat back in his command chair, gazing pensively at the starfield on the viewscreen. The UES Prometheus, a Vanguard-class exploration vessel, had been surveying this uncharted region of space for weeks with little to show for it. "Anything on long-range sensors?" Ensign Patel. Luka asked, glancing over at the young woman hunched intently over her console. Ensign Tara Patel furrowed her brow, double-checking the readings before responding. "Actually, sir, I am picking up an anomaly. Some sort of faint power signature, approximately 2.3 light-years spinward of our position." Luka straightened up, his curiosity piqued. Out here in the void between star systems, any sign of technology was noteworthy. "Alter course to investigate. Best possible speed. And let's go to yellow alert, just to be cautious." As the crew scrambled to action stations and the Prometheus lurched onto its new heading, Luka found himself hoping this would turn out to be more than just another false alarm. They were far from home out here, and a discovery of some weight would make the long journey seem more worthwhile. Several uneventful hours passed as they closed the distance to the mysterious energy source. Luka was just about to retire to his ready room when Tara's voice cut through the bridge. "Captain, we're picking up a massive structure on visual. It looks like some kind of space station, but far larger than any I've seen before." Rising from his chair, Luka joined Tara at her station, peering intently at her displays. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. Spinning slowly against the starlit backdrop was an immense construct, easily several times larger than the greatest of humanity's orbital cities. Its hull was pitted and scarred, indicating extreme age, yet still pulsed with veins of dim light, hinting at still functional systems within. "Incredible," Luka murmured, awestruck by the sheer scale of the ancient station. "What can you tell me about it, Ensign?" "Scans indicate it's been here for millennia at minimum," Tara reported, her fingers flying over her console as she parsed the incoming data. "But Captain, I'm detecting active power signatures from the station's core. Something inside is still running." A chill crept up Luka's spine at her words. An automated outpost from a long-dead civilization was one thing, but this hinted at something more, and potentially more dangerous. "Captain, I recommend we send over a boarding team to investigate the station's interior," came the gruff voice of Chief Engineer Max Wayland. The burly man had appeared at Luka's side, his eyes gleaming with barely contained excitement at the prospect of examining the ancient technological marvel. Luka hesitated a moment, weighing the risks against his own burning curiosity. If this station held secrets from a lost age, it could change the course of history. What wonders might they uncover within those aging halls? And yet, he thought with a frown, such wonders often came at a price. There was no telling what defenses or hazardous the builders might have left behind. An away team would be venturing into the unknown, facing untold dangers. In the end, the need to know won out over caution. Humanity had not risen to the stars by shying away from the mysteries of the cosmos. "Assemble an away team, Chief. But I want them in full hazmat gear with a complement of security personnel. We're taking no chances until we know what we're dealing with." As Wayland nodded and hurried off to make the preparations, Luka turned back to the viewscreen, studying the enigmatic station that hung tantalizingly before them. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of a paradigm-shifting revelation. Little did he know then just how accurate the premonition would prove to be, or how the events about to unfold would reshape the very foundations of galactic society. The UES Prometheus and her crew had stumbled across something far darker and more dangerous than a simple relic of a bygone age. They had found the first thread that, once pulled, would unravel a conspiracy of such scale and depravity that it would push humanity to the brink of war, and perhaps change the face of the galaxy forever. But for now, as the away team made ready to venture into the silent depths of the ancient station, all they knew was that they stood on the precipice of a great discovery, the true import of which was yet to be revealed. As the away team made their final checks in the shuttle bay, Captain Ivanov's voice crackled over the comm, his words heavy with the gravity of the moment. "Away team, this is the captain. You carry the hopes and curiosity of all humanity with you. Uncover what you can, but remember, your safety is paramount. At the first sign of danger, pull back immediately. We have no idea what's waiting over there." "Acknowledged, Captain," replied Wayland as he secured his helmet, the rest of the team arrayed behind him in their gleaming white EV suits. "We'll take it slow and steady." Ivanov out. With those words, the shuttle departed the Prometheus, gliding silently through the void toward the waiting behemoth of the ancient station. As it slipped through a cavernous opening that may once have been a hangar bay and set down on an age-worn landing platform, the team exchanged apprehensive glances. They were about to become the first humans to set foot inside this relic of a forgotten time. The station's interior was dark and cold, emergency lighting flickering fitfully along debris-strewn corridors. The away team moved cautiously, scanners sweeping left and right, until they came to what appeared to be a central control room. "These consoles look like they're still active," murmured Ensign Patel, brushing away a thick layer of dust to reveal dimly glowing screens. "If I can just access the mainframe, we might be able to learn what this place was for." As the team took up defensive positions around her, Tara set to work, her fingers dancing across the ancient interface as she tried to decipher its secrets. Long, tense minutes passed in eerie silence, broken only by the hum of their suit systems and the occasional creak of settling metal. Then, with a triumphant exclamation, Tara broke through the system's security protocols. Data began to stream across her visor, and her heart pounded harder with each line she read. "Oh my God," she breathed, her voice trembling with a mixture of excitement and dawning horror. "This isn't just a station. It's some kind of hub for a slavery network. These records detail the abduction and sale of millions of sapient beings from dozens of worlds." Shocked silence settled over the team as the enormity of the discovery sank in. The idea that something this depraved could have operated on such a scale, unchecked and hidden for untold centuries, defied belief. "We need to get this back to the captain immediately," said Wayland grimly. "If this is all true, it could be the biggest scandal in the history of the galaxy. We're talking government corruption, corporate collusion, entire economies built on institutionalized barbarism. This could bring the whole rotten system crashing down." As the team hurried to download as much of the damning evidence as they could and transmit it back to the Prometheus, they couldn't have known that they were lighting the first spark of a revolution that would reshape the balance of power across known space. They were about to drag a monstrous conspiracy into the light, and in so doing, set in motion events that would lead to the downfall of an empire built on the suffering of the innocent. But this was only the beginning. The secrets they'd uncovered on this ghostly station were but the first piece of a puzzle that, once assembled, would reveal a truth so shocking and so profound that it would test the very limits of human resolve. Captain Ivanov and his crew were about to be drawn into a conflict unlike any they had faced before, one that would call upon all their ingenuity, all their courage, and all their unbreakable human spirit to overcome. The battle lines were about to be drawn, and the UES Prometheus would find itself on the front lines of the greatest moral crusade in the history of the galaxy. Gathering allies. Admiral Nia Sato stared grimly at the holographic display floating above the briefing room table, the lines of data painting a picture of depravity and corruption on an almost unimaginable scale. In the days since the UES Prometheus' shocking discovery, Nia and her team at Galactic Command had been working around the clock to verify the evidence and begin formulating a response. "It's even worse than we initially thought," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "These slavers have infiltrated the governments and corporations of over a dozen major spacefaring civilizations. They've made themselves indispensable to the galactic economy, all while perpetuating obscene cruelty behind a veil of secrecy." Ambassador Karim Al-Hamdi leaned forward, his dark eyes glinting with determination. "Then it's clear what we must do. We cannot stand alone against such a vast conspiracy. We need allies, and we need them quickly." Nia nodded, her gaze sweeping across the assembled officers and dignitaries. Agreed. That's why I've called you all here. Each of you represents a species or faction that we believe may be sympathetic to our cause. If we can build a coalition against the slavers, we stand a chance of bringing them to justice. One of the alien representatives, a tall, slender being with luminous green skin and elegantly swept-back head crests, raised a long-fingered hand. I am Velak, speaking for the Xylothian Concordance, they said, their voice musical and rhythmic. My people have long suspected the existence of such a vile trade, but we lack the strength to confront it alone. If humanity will lead this charge, the Concordance will stand with you. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room as other delegates voiced their support. Nia felt a swell of pride and determination. This was what humanity did best, rallying others to a righteous cause, leading the charge against tyranny and injustice. Over the next several hours, the group hammered out the details of their nascent alliance: military assets, intelligence sharing protocols, strategic targets. They knew they were up against a formidable foe, one with nearly limitless resources and a stranglehold on the levers of power across the galaxy. But they also knew that they had something the slavers did not: a commitment to freedom and dignity that transcended species or borders. As the meeting adjourned and the various representatives filed out to begin mobilizing their forces, Ambassador Al-Hamdi fell into step beside Nia. "You know this is just the beginning," he murmured, his expression somber. "When we shine a light into the darkest corners of the galaxy, there's no telling what other horrors we might uncover." Nia's jaw tightened, but her resolve never wavered. "Whatever we find, we'll face it head-on. We're not just fighting for the victims of the slavers. We're fighting for the soul of the galaxy itself, and that's a battle humanity will never shy away from." As they strode through the bustling command center, already abuzz with the energy of a war machine gearing up, Nia couldn't help but reflect on the incredible responsibility that now rested on human shoulders. They had set out to explore the stars, to seek out knowledge and forge connections with the myriad wonders of the cosmos. But now fate had dealt them a different hand. Now they would have to fight, not for conquest or glory, but for the most basic rights of all sentient beings. It was a daunting prospect, but one that filled Nia with a fierce, unwavering determination. Humanity had risen from a cradle world riven by war and strife to become a beacon of unity and progress in the galactic community. They had overcome countless challenges and forged their own path among the stars. And now, they would lead the charge once more, this time, to shatter the chains of oppression and bring the light of justice to the darkest corners of the galaxy. The battle ahead would be long and hard, fraught with danger and sacrifice. But Nia knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that humanity would not falter. They would stand tall, shoulder to shoulder with their allies, and they would not rest until the scourge of slavery was wiped from the face of the galaxy. It was a bold dream, perhaps even an impossible one. But as Nia looked out over the sea of determined faces, human and alien alike, all united in common purpose, she felt an unshakable faith in their cause. The slavers had sown the seeds of their own destruction the moment they dared to underestimate the indomitable will of free peoples. Now those seeds would bear bitter fruit. Humanity would lead the way, a shining spear of justice piercing the heart of the slave trade. And the galaxy would never be the same. As Nia and her team worked tirelessly to build their coalition, halfway across the galaxy, a very different sort of preparation was underway. In the shadowy underbelly of a sprawling space station, a clandestine meeting was taking place, one that would set in motion the next phase of the war against the slavers. Specialist Layla Kader, elite operative of the human special forces, slipped silently into the dimly lit room, her hand never straying far from the pulse pistol at her hip. Arrayed before her was a motley assortment of figures: a hulking reptilian in battle-scarred armor, a wiry human with cybernetic implants glinting at his temples, a hooded figure of indeterminate species radiating an aura of coiled menace. "You're late," growled the reptilian, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. I thought you humans prided yourselves on punctuality. And I thought we were all here for something more important than petty jabs, Layla replied coolly, unperturbed by the alien's hostile tone. We have work to do. As if on cue, a figure detached itself from the shadows at the back of the room. A slender, unassuming man with close-cropped black hair and piercing dark eyes. Chen Liu, master hacker and data infiltrator, was an unmatched genius when it came to digital espionage, and a key asset in the fight against the slavers. I've cracked the encryption on the latest batch of slaver communications, Jen said without preamble, his fingers already dancing across the holographic interface of his wrist computer. It looks like they're getting nervous. They're consolidating their operations, moving slaves and resources to a handful of heavily fortified installations. The hooded figure leaned forward, pale hands clenching into fists. Then we strike now, they hissed, their voice a sibilant whisper. Hit them hard and fast while they're vulnerable. But Layla shook her head. No, that's exactly what they're expecting us to do. We need to be smarter than that. She turned to Jen, a plan already forming in her mind. Those installations, can you get us inside? Not for an assault, but for sabotage and intelligence gathering. A slow smile spread across Jen's face. With the right team and the right plan, I can get you inside anywhere. Over the next hour, the group, comprising some of the finest covert operatives and resistance fighters from a dozen worlds, hashed out the details of a series of daring infiltration missions. They would slip into the heart of the slavers' operations, gathering critical intel and planting the seeds of destruction, all while evading detection by the enemy's formidable security apparatus. It was a risky gambit, one that would require flawless execution and no small amount of luck. But if successful, it could deal a crippling blow to the slavers' infrastructure and pave the way for the larger military campaign to come. As the meeting broke up and the operatives slipped away into the neon-lit labyrinth of the station, each to make their own furtive way to their designated targets, Layla couldn't suppress a thrill of pride and anticipation. This was what she lived for. The chance to strike a blow against tyranny and injustice, to use her skills and cunning in service of a cause greater than herself. She knew the odds were stacked against them. The slavers were powerful, entrenched, and utterly ruthless. They would stop at nothing to protect their vile empire, and they had the resources and influence to make life very difficult for anyone who opposed them. But Layla also knew the strength and determination of those who fought beside her. She had seen the fire in their eyes, the unbreakable resolve that came from having endured the unendurable. These were beings who had lost everything to the slavers, their homes, their families, their very freedom. And they would gladly give their last breath to see their oppressors brought to ruin. As she boarded her unmarked stealth shuttle and prepared for the long journey ahead, Layla allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She thought of her own family, safe and free back on Earth, and of the countless families across the galaxy who had been torn apart by the slavers' greed and cruelty. She thought of the brave men and women of the coalition forces, even now marshalling their strength for the confrontation to come, and of the nameless, faceless multitudes languishing in chains on 100 conquered worlds. And she reaffirmed her silent vow that she would not rest, would not falter, until the scourge of slavery was wiped from the face of the galaxy. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, she would see this fight through to the end. Because that was the duty of all free beings, to stand against the darkness, to be a light for those lost in the shadows. And in this great struggle, on the front lines of the most important battle of their age, Layla Cater and her band of infiltrators would be the first to strike a blow for freedom. The covert war had begun. Infiltration and sabotage. Layla Cater moved silently through the darkened corridors of the slaver stronghold, her every sense on high alert. Around her, the rest of the infiltration team fanned out, their weapons at the ready, their eyes scanning for any sign of the enemy. They had breached the installation's outer defenses with surprising ease, thanks in no small part to Zhen Lu's masterful slicing of the security systems. But Lila knew better than to let her guard down. The slavers hadn't built an empire on carelessness and complacency. As they delved deeper into the heart of the compound, the signs of the slavers' true nature became increasingly apparent. They passed rooms filled with restraining devices and torture implements, laboratories where twisted experiments were conducted on helpless subjects, holding cells packed with the wretched and the hopeless. Bile rose in Layla's throat, and a white-hot rage kindled in her chest. This was the ugly truth behind the slavers' veneer of wealth and power, a foundation built on unimaginable suffering and degradation. Suddenly, a voice crackled over their secure comm channel, the voice of Kaxar, the hulking reptilian warrior who had volunteered to lead a diversionary attack on the compound's main gate. "We've engaged the enemy," he growled, the sound of pulse fire and shouting audible in the background. "But there's something wrong. Their response is too coordinated, too quick. It's like they knew we were coming." Layla's blood ran cold. Had they been betrayed? Had the slavers somehow gotten wind of their plan? She forced down a surge of panic, her mind racing to formulate a new strategy. "Jen, how close are you to tapping into their data network?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. "Almost there," came the reply, the hacker's fingers flying over his wrist computer. "Just need to bypass one more." "Got it. I'm in." Layla nodded, a grim smile tugging at her lips. "Then it's time for Phase 2. Kaxar, fall back to the rendezvous point. We'll meet you there with the package." "Understood," the reptilian rumbled. "Give them hell, little human." As the diversion team fought their way clear of the compound, Layla and her infiltrators split up, each heading for their pre-assigned targets. Jen melted into the shadows, making for the central control room where he could wreak havoc on the slavers' systems. The others fanned out through the facility, planting explosives at key structural points, sabotaging weapons and vehicles, doing everything in their power to cripple the slavers' ability to respond to the coming attack. Layla herself had the most critical mission of all. She made her way down to the detention level, her heart pounding in her chest as she approached the heavy blast doors that barred the way. With a few deft keystrokes on her wrist computer, the doors hissed open, revealing a scene out of a nightmare. Rows upon rows of cells stretched out before her, each one packed with the pitiful forms of slaves and prisoners from 100 different worlds. Their eyes, dull and hopeless, turned to her as she entered, a faint spark of curiosity and fear kindling in their depths. "I'm here to get you out," Layla said, her voice ringing with conviction. "The slavers' reign ends today. You are free." For a long moment, there was silence, a held breath of disbelief and desperate hope. Then, a single voice, thin and quavering, but filled with a fierce, unbreakable spirit, called out, "The human speaks truth. I have seen them fight for our sake. Rise up, brothers and sisters. Our liberation is at hand." And with that, the floodgates opened. A great roar went up from the assembled slaves, a sound of defiance and jubilation that shook the very walls of the compound. They surged forward, their chains and shackles falling away as Layla and her team worked feverishly to release them. Armed with little more than their bare hands and the raw courage of the long oppressed, the freed slaves fell upon their former captors with a vengeance. The slavers, caught off guard and already reeling from the infiltrators' sabotage, were quickly overwhelmed. As the fighting raged through the corridors of the compound, Layla and her team led the exodus of the liberated, guiding them up and out into the open air, where shuttles waited to ferry them to safety. Many wept openly as they emerged into the light, feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces for the first time in years or decades. Others simply stared in wonder at the great ships of the coalition fleet hanging in the sky above, a sight they had never dared dream they would live to see. Layla stood watching as the last of the shuttles lifted off, carrying its precious cargo of freed souls to a new life. Her heart swelled with a fierce, bittersweet joy. They had struck a mighty blow this day, had torn hundreds of innocents from the slavers' cruel grasp. But she knew this was only the beginning. There were still countless more out there, languishing in bondage, waiting for the dawn of their own liberation. And as long as a single slave remained in chains, Layla and her comrades would not rest. They had lit the spark of rebellion, had shown the galaxy that the slavers were not invincible, that their power could be challenged and broken. Now it fell to the forces of the coalition to fan that spark into a raging inferno, to bring the full might of their united strength to bear against the enemy. As she boarded her own shuttle, Layla allowed herself a moment to reflect on all that had been achieved, and all that was yet to come. The road ahead would be long and hard, fraught with danger and sacrifice, but she knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that they would emerge victorious. For they fought not for glory or gain, but for the most fundamental rights of all sentient beings, the right to live free, to chart their own destiny, to reach for the stars unshackled by the chains of oppression. And in that noble cause, there could be no surrender, no retreat. Only the steady, unyielding march toward justice, toward a galaxy reborn in the light of liberty. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying Layla and her team away from the smoking ruin of the slaver stronghold, a great cheer went up from the fleet above. Word of their victory spread like wildfire, igniting a blaze of hope and defiance across the stars. On 100 worlds, in 1,000 cities and settlements, the downtrodden and the subjugated lifted their heads, a new fire kindling in their eyes. They had heard the news, had seen the proof that the slavers could be defied, could be defeated. And in that moment, a galaxy held its breath, poised on the brink of a great uprising. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, watered with the blood of heroes and the tears of the oppressed. Now they would grow and spread, until their roots cracked the very foundations of the slavers' empire. The infiltrators had done their work, had struck the first blows in the hidden war. Now the stage was set for the great powers to clash, for the fate of billions to be decided in the crucible of open battle. The final confrontation was at hand, and the galaxy would tremble before its fury. The final offensive begins. General Booker King stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Retribution, his steely gaze fixed on the holographic display before him. The combined fleets of the coalition hung in space around him, a vast armada of ships from a dozen worlds, united in common cause against the slavers. "All ships report ready, sir," said his executive officer, a tall, sharp-featured woman named Irina Petrov. "The infiltrators have confirmed that the slavers' defenses are in disarray following their sabotage efforts. We won't get a better chance than this." Booker nodded, his jaw set with grim determination. "Then let's not waste it. Signal all ships. Commence the attack." As one, the great vessels of the coalition surged forward, their engines flaring bright against the darkness of space. Ahead of them, the slavers' forces scrambled to mount a defense, their formation ragged and disorganized in the wake of the infiltrators' devastating strikes. The first volleys of fire erupted between the closing fleets, great lances of energy stitching the void as mighty warships clashed in titanic fury. The slavers fought with the desperate ferocity of cornered beasts, knowing that their very survival hung in the balance. But the coalition had the advantage of surprise and righteous anger on their side. They crashed into the enemy lines like a thunderbolt, their weapons firing with relentless precision, their crews driven by an unbreakable will to see justice done. On the bridge of the Retribution, Booker watched as his ships pressed the attack, his heart swelling with pride at their valor and skill. Beside him, Irina coordinated the fire of the flagship's massive cannon batteries, her face a mask of focused concentration. "General, we're receiving a transmission from the surface of the slaver homeworld," called out one of the bridge crew, his voice tight with excitement. "It's the resistance leader, Jolanfar. He says the slave population is rising up against their masters, inspired by news of our offensive." Booker's eyes widened, a fierce grin spreading across his face. This was better than he could have hoped for. Not only were they crushing the slavers' military might, but the very people they had oppressed for so long were now turning against them, driven by the irresistible force of a long-denied thirst for freedom. "Patch him through," Booker ordered, his voice ringing with triumph. Let the galaxy hear the voice of liberation. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a deep, powerful voice filled the air, speaking in heavily accented but passionate galactic common. To all the free peoples of the stars, hear me. I am Cholanfar, and I speak for the enslaved billions of the slaver homeworld. For generations, we have languished in chains, our spirits beaten down, our hope all but extinguished. But no more. A great roar could be heard in the background, the sound of countless voices raised in defiance and jubilation. Today we rise, Jolanfar cried, his voice trembling with emotion. Today we cast off the shackles of our oppressors and claim our birthright as free beings. Today we join our strength to yours, to see the final downfall of the slaver scourge. Cheers erupted across the bridge, echoed by countless more over the fleet comm channels as the coalition forces redoubled their efforts, their hearts soaring with the knowledge that they did not fight alone, that the very people they had come to save were now fighting alongside them, in spirit if not in body. The battle raged on, the slavers' resistance crumbling before the onslaught of the coalition and the uprising of their former slaves. One by one, their ships were blasted into oblivion, their bases and strongholds reduced to rubble. And on the surface of their homeworld, a great wave of revolution swept across the land, as the downtrodden and subjugated masses rose up as one to tear down the edifices of their enslavement, to visit upon their former masters a reckoning long overdue. It was a day that would live forever in the annals of galactic history, the day when the united peoples of the stars, guided by the indomitable spirit of humanity, struck a fatal blow against the greatest evil of their age, and in so doing, lit the fires of a new era of freedom and justice. As the last of the slaver ships was reduced to drifting debris, and the final holdouts of their once mighty empire were subdued and captured, a great cheer went up from the fleets of the coalition, a sound of joy and relief and hard-won victory that echoed across the stars. On the bridge of the retribution, General Booker King closed his eyes, a solitary tear trickling down his battle-worn cheek. They had done it. Against all odds, against an enemy that had seemed invincible, they had prevailed. The long nightmare of the slaver's reign was over at last. But even as he savored the sweet taste of triumph, Booker knew that their work was far from done. There would be a great deal of rebuilding and healing to do in the days and years ahead, as the scars left by centuries of slavery and oppression were slowly mended. And there would be justice to be meted out, as the surviving leaders and collaborators of the slaver regime were brought before the galactic courts to answer for their monstrous crimes. But for now, in this moment of hard-earned victory, Booker allowed himself to simply feel the weight of what they had achieved, to bask in the knowledge that by their courage and sacrifice, they had changed the course of history and struck a blow for the cause of freedom that would resound through the ages. As the ships of the coalition fleet began the long journey home, their crews exhausted but exultant, Booker looked out at the stars, a smile of quiet satisfaction on his face. Humanity had once again proven itself a force for good in the galaxy, a beacon of hope and justice in the face of even the darkest of evils. And though the road ahead would be long and hard, Booker knew that they would walk it together, united in their determination to build a better future for all the peoples of the stars. The war was over, the slavers were broken, and a new age of freedom and possibility had dawned, born in the fire of righteous struggle and tempered in the unbreakable spirit of those who had fought and bled for its coming. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was a good thing. Liberation and justice. President Sofia Martinez stood on a raised platform in the heart of the newly liberated capital of the slaver homeworld, her eyes sweeping over the sea of faces before her. They were the faces of the free, of those who had endured the unimaginable and emerged unbroken, their spirits tempered by the fires of adversity. Beside her stood Amer Okafor, the chief prosecutor of the Galactic Court, his expression one of solemn determination. Behind them, a great banner fluttered in the breeze, emblazoned with the emblem of the coalition, a symbol of unity and common purpose that had become a beacon of hope to the oppressed across the stars. "People of the galaxy," Sophia began, her voice ringing out clear and strong across the assembled throngs. "Today, we gather to mark the end of a long and terrible chapter in our shared history. For centuries, the specter of slavery has haunted the stars, a blight upon the very soul of our civilization. But no more." A great cheer went up from the crowd, a sound of joy and relief and fierce, unbreakable pride. Sophia waited for the noise to subside before continuing, her eyes shining with emotion. "By your courage, by your sacrifice, by your unwavering commitment to the cause of justice and freedom, you have broken the chains of oppression and cast down the tyrants who sought to hold you in bondage. You have shown the galaxy the true strength of the united peoples and the indomitable spirit that dwells within every sentient being." As she spoke, Sophia's gaze fell upon a small group standing at the front of the crowd, the former slaves who had been held captive in the slavers' final stronghold, those whose liberation had marked the turning point in the war. Among them stood Nyari, the young woman whose voice had been the first to rally her fellow prisoners to rise up against their captors. Sophia met Nyari's eyes, and a silent understanding passed between them, a recognition of the profound weight of this moment, and the long road that still lay ahead. "But our work is not yet done," Sophia continued, her voice taking on a note of steely resolve. "The slavers may be defeated, but the scars they have left upon the galaxy will take time to heal. There are still countless worlds to be rebuilt, countless lives to be mended, and there is still justice to be served." At this, a mayor stepped forward, his voice deep and resonant as he addressed the crowd. "The leaders of the slaver regime, those who orchestrated and profited from the suffering of billions, will be held to account for their crimes. They will face the judgment of the Galactic Court, and the full weight of the law will be brought to bear against them." A murmur of satisfaction rippled through the crowd at these words, a sense of long-awaited retribution finally at hand. A mayor raised his hands, his expression one of solemn promise. "I swear to you, on behalf of the court and all the free peoples of the galaxy, that there will be no escape, no evasion of justice for these monsters. They will answer for every life ruined, every family torn asunder, every dream crushed under the heel of their oppression. And they will know the full measure of the galaxy's righteous anger." As Amer's words rang out, Sophia felt a swell of pride and determination rising within her. This was what they had fought for, what so many had laid down their lives to achieve. A galaxy where justice reigned, where the strong could no longer prey upon the weak with impunity. It would be a long and difficult road, she knew. The wounds left by the slavers ran deep, and the task of rebuilding would be a generational undertaking. But as she looked out over the faces of the free, as she saw the fire of hope and resilience burning bright in their eyes, she knew that they would rise to the challenge. For they were the people of the stars, the inheritors of a legacy of courage and determination that stretched back to the very dawn of human spaceflight. They had faced the darkness and emerged unbroken, had stared down the mightiest of empires and emerged victorious. And now, as they stood on the threshold of a new era, they would once again prove to the galaxy the indomitable strength of the united peoples, the unbreakable spirit that had carried them through the longest night and into the bright dawn of freedom. As Sophia and Amer stepped down from the platform to mingle with the crowd, they were surrounded by a sea of joy and gratitude, of laughter and tears and fierce embraces. All around them, the liberated peoples of the slaver world celebrated their newfound freedom, their voices raised in songs of triumph and remembrance. And watching it all with quiet pride, her heart swelling with the weight of this historic moment, Sophia Martinez knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had been forever changed by the events of these past months, by the courage and sacrifice of those who had fought and bled for the cause of justice. A new era had dawned, an age of possibility and promise unlike any that had come before. And as humanity took its place at the forefront of this great galactic awakening, as it once again proved itself a beacon of hope and progress in the face of even the darkest of adversities, Sophia knew that the future was bright. There would be challenges ahead, to be sure. The scars of the past would not heal overnight, and the work of building a truly just and equitable galactic society would be the task of generations. But as she looked out over the sea of faces, as she saw the unbridled joy and fierce determination writ large upon every visage, she knew that they would meet those challenges head-on, with the same courage and resolve that had carried them through the darkest of times. For they were the people of the stars, the inheritors of a dream as old as humanity itself, the dream of a universe united in common purpose, of a galaxy where every sentient being could live in dignity and freedom, their potential unleashed and their destiny unbound. And as long as that dream burned bright in their hearts, as long as the fire of hope and resilience remained undimmed, there was no force in the universe that could stand against them. The war was over, the slavers were vanquished, and a new dawn had broken over the galaxy, bright with the promise of a future forged in the unbreakable bonds of unity and justice. It was a future that belonged to them all, and together they would make it a reality, one step at a time, one day at a time, until the last shadow of oppression had been banished from the stars, and the light of freedom shone bright and clear across the cosmos. For they were the people of the galaxy, and their destiny was just beginning.